Happy full moon. Today is Sunday, the 5th of February, 2023, and we have a beautiful, big, juicy full moon in Leo. We got a lot to say today as we also dive into Gene Key 13, which is going to be freaking epic for the feminine particularly, because it really highlights one of our superpowers. So just welcoming everyone who's jumping on. Give me a little emoji. Let me know, how is this this full moon for you? How are you feeling in this full moon? I'm getting worked, but in good ways. You know, it's deep, deep work. It's transformative work. I'd love to hear what's happening for you in the collective. This full moon in Leo is opposite the sun in Aquarius. Gene Key 13 is where the sun is hitting, and the opposite, the programming partner, is Gene Key 7. So Claudia's here. Hello from London. Maria Jesus Rivas. Hola from Spain. Awesome. Katie from Chicago. How are you all feeling? How is this full moon for you? It's really potent. I got to see her come up last night when she comes up at the same time as the sun sets, and it was really stunning. I'm back in California, and that highlights for me, Leo is in my home house. So here we are. You get to know where Leo is in your chart, and that chances are is where you're experiencing some deep transformation. So one of my teachers, I'm going to just dive into a little bit of it. Oh, Claudia says, yeah, it's Leo. I'm wired. You're a Leo. Totally. That's your Leo sun. You're wired. This is like giving you so much amplification. Right. So Leo, unlocking our essence, our spirit, our joy, our ability to shine. Those of you who receive the videos that track the moon in you, you know my embodiment practice for this Leo full moon is to open up and shine. So welcome to our Sunday transmission, Dharma talk. I feel like it's ours. And I call this soul education for the awakened woman. And this is our way of curating and even crowdsourcing through our chat what we're experiencing as the sun highlights certain frequencies. And that's just a way for us to channel our thinking, like our awareness. And so today we have new moon, full moon. I keep saying new moon, but it's full moon frequencies. And I love what Michael Lennox, my astrologer, one of my astrologers, I love him. I've been following him for over a decade. And he said this in his post: absolutely nothing will stay the same as the result of this full moon. Let me say that again. Absolutely nothing will stay the same as a result of this full moon. Wow. So what is it in your chart? What is in your world? Your chart is just your world. What is it in your world that will not stay the same? Leo in my home house. I am poised for a new home. Can you all give me an amen and send some Shakti my way? Shakti is coming my way because that is the full moon. So what is it for you? And we're going to dive into this in the Razor's Edge, the community call for the Evolving Sisters Network members. We're going to dive into this after this transmission. So at the top of the hour, we're all gathering on Zoom, and we'll unpack for each other this full moon. It's just gorgeous. It's big. It's impactful. Nothing's going to stay the same. Okay. All right. So this full moon is calling us to really shine, to step up, to step into our leadership, to notice the ways, because I think there's Pluto in the mix here. So noticing the ways that your leadership has been out, and as a result, has kept you in a certain position. So I'm really grokking that for myself because it's deep. We want to go deep with it. We don't want to just get surfacial. Oh, I need a new home. No, what's underneath? What has stopped me from creating home? And you get to apply that to whatever it is, wherever Leo shows up for you in whatever house Leo's in. So this Leo full moon is asking us to get into deeper service on behalf of humanity. And so we know that kind of service comes from being completely aligned with our authenticity and our truth. There is no service without that. So it is a path of awakening. The more you awaken, the more you're going to be able to serve. And these gene key teachings hopefully are highlighting some of the nuances that we need to let go of the shadow patterns. And this full moon is about letting go. Again, it always offers us this chance to let go and to celebrate how far you've come. And now what has come into your awareness, full moon light, the sun, the light of the sun hitting the moon, what has come into your awareness that it's time to go? What pattern? Just looking at some of your chats. Amens. Expansion, forward momentum. Beautiful. So 13, that number 13, right? The number of the goddess. And Richard Rudd was talking about how this gene key 13 carries these secrets. And one of the secrets is found in the tarot, the deck of the tarot. Card number 13 is the death card. And so institutions, churches maligned 13 because of that association with death. Isn't that interesting? That's kind of how like religion handles it. Okay, we'll just not, it doesn't exist. We won't ever use that number 13, and then what? We won't die. But we're talking about a death and a rebirth. We're talking about dying to the old. We're talking about what this full moon is asking us to do always, every month, showing us, highlighting, okay, great. You've grown so much. Good job. Now you can let go of that. And now you can just step into some place that totally is new, or maybe you're afraid of, but you're ready. So 13 starts with the shadow of discord. This is going to be kind of subtle, so you get to really tune in and listen. Listening is going to be the touchstone, and listen with your full body. So just open right now to listening with your full body. I talk about this a lot with sight, because we talk about the word drishti, that third eye gaze. When you have your third eye gaze on something, it's soft, it's focused and soft, because it opens up. I'm doing it now. It opens up peripheral vision. So right now, as you listen to this, see if you can do this in your listening. That means you're paying attention and you're right here with me, and it's soft, so that the other parts of your body that have these spidey senses, and we talked about that last week with codependency and this sensitivity, and that the feminine has these hairs on our arms, on our face, these little spidey senses. We have them all over. Everyone does. And the feminine has more access points to it. Just culturally, I would say biologically, the fact that we cycle, we have more fluidity with our emotions. And so this, listen with your whole body. And that's going to be the teaching that we're going to unpack of 13. The gift in 13 is called discernment. I'm going to rename all of these for this talk. I'm not renaming his work. I'm just renaming it for this talk. And the Siddhi is empathy. And I think this is going to be very powerful for many of you, especially those who have that sensitivity and have considered yourself empathic. So what I see for this is that let me rename this and then we'll go into it, that the shadow frequency is carrying the burdens from the past. Some people do this better than others. And as the collective, we all do this really well collectively. And I mean that facetiously because it's a superpower that has held us back. I remember Carolyn Mace in The Anatomy of the Spirit. She talks about how tribal energy is very first chakra. So if anyone wants to get above the tribe, like they want to break out and succeed, they often have to leave the tribe. It's kind of like if your family pattern has a pattern of thinking that wealth is bad, you will probably not get wealthy because your family has already told you in that tribal pattern that something will be wrong with you if you do that. So this is a great analogy. So that's the shadow of 13. 13 has this baggage that it's wearing on its back. So if you were wearing that on your back, that you said to yourself, I can't be wealthy, even though part of you has this deep desire to be. So you're like, oh, I want it, I want it, I want it. And then you're like, oh, but I'm so bad, right? So you can't move because you're stuck between two polarities that has you like a puppet. You can't move. And if you stay on the spiritual path and you don't numb out, or you numb out and then you get on the spiritual path, you will discover that you'll start to heal yourself, right? You'll discover that those are just emotional patterns, not just, but they are emotional patterns. They are shadow banned. You'll see whatever words you'll put to it, you'll start to discuss or discover that that's the view that your family has, and you'll start to break out. And oftentimes, what does that mean? You're breaking out means you got to go. So you might go off to college. You might move to another city. You might cut off family relationships at that moment and be like, no, because you know you need to grow. You know you need to seed this new frequency. You know you need to work through the shame that has you break away from the old pattern. Because the old pattern is self-referencing, right? It's self-evident. If you're in a pattern, you know it because you constantly create it. And you call the world that that's what it is. When really that's not everyone's experience. That's just your experience or your clan, your tribe's experience, because that's the view that you're operating under. So once you start to change your view by going into it, by doing the deep shadow work, by confronting the shame of something's wrong with me, I'm defective, that's why this has happened, and you start to break out, other people often, if they're in the shadow, are not going to pat you on the back and say, great job for breaking out of our prison. They're going to say, are you kidding me? Get back in the prison. It's not safe out there. Get back in the prison. So that's Jinky 13 in a nutshell. It's the discord. It's the oppression of the burden of the past. And then the gift is that discernment. It's the discernment. The reason why it's called that is so that when we begin to wake up and when we begin to know that, wait a second, that's the view I'm operating under. That's not the truth. Or the feelings I have of shame, of unworthiness are not truth. They're just an experience that I'm having because of a conditioning that I went through. That's the discerning, to know the difference. I'm going to call this gift frequency today, for today's purpose, listening. It's the number one superpower of the feminine. And that's going to take us on a smooth ride into empathy. Because empathy in the world of the Gene Keys is not the same as the way we use it in ordinary dialogue. The way that we have understood empathy is very similar to last week's transmission of codependence. You're sensitive, you can feel it all, and so therefore you take it on as your responsibility to do something about someone else's experience. They're not happy, they're feeling uncomfortable, they're feeling shame. So I need to change my behavior in order for them to feel comfortable. And we really unpacked that. And then we got into Razor's Edge and we like really unpacked that. That was so powerful because we discovered that as the feminine has been conditioned, we have a lot of thoughts about taking on other people's experience and that we need to fix it. And then move that to a global level. And we think of poverty. You know, I was rescuing dogs, so I was using that as an example. We also talked about the world and fixing the world. And so we enter the world with the view that something's wrong here. And we find the evidence, which then confirms that I was right. Something is wrong here. And really, if we look deeper, it's something's wrong here because something's wrong with me. That is the process of negative love. We talked about that in The World is Your Oyster. But like, how does that have to do with the world of your oyster? Well, everything. So we're going to just placeholder that there's other references, other places you can go to go deeper with this work. But for now, we're going to go on this ride of how do we then utilize this superpower and what is true empathy, and what gift is that for the world, for the planet. Oh, I love this. I hope you're having fun. I'm just going to check out some chatting and see how you are. All right. So one of the phrases that struck me in the transmission of 13 is, I'm going to read this. Richard Rudd says, the 13th Siddhi can unlock the essence of what it means to be a wild panther, a strawberry, or a mollusc, those shells. This is the power of empathy. So this, sisters, is where we're going. When I asked you at the beginning of this session to get into deep listening and listen with your body, what we're seeing is that listening is not a passive act. When you become the field of listening, you actually affect transformation in others. You impact others. And so our listening is often, and I think even particular for the feminine, one of the most powerful gifts we can possibly give. And so inside my communities, and if you've been in the business mastery or the inner circle, we cultivate our skill set around listening. The way that I even teach how to sell in the business mastery, there's like a whole module on selling. Everything is about listening. And we set up a structure to encourage, to ask the right questions so that we can listen, so that we can be of service. That is sales. And when we frame it like that, then we no longer feel avoidant to sell something. We no longer feel shame that we're promoting ourselves. We burn through that because we know that we're serving by listening. Listening is one of the greatest superpowers. And so when we listen, we create a field. And this field has no judgment in it. And that's why it's called discerning, because At this point in your evolution, you've gotten to the place where you can discern your own interior. So when you have thoughts and beliefs about the world, you can actually go in and sift through what's true here. What do I need to know here? What is conditioning here? What is my family pattern meeting itself out? That discernment helps me become a field, an empty space, because we don't have our stuff in it anymore. And that's the purification. This is in the ring of purification. The purification that happens when we burn off all of the ways we've intertwined, and let's use the word enmeshed, our reality with the reality. And we started to understand conditioning. And then, if you've noticed, as an awakened woman, you've probably noticed this, that as you continue to do that, you become a better listener, because things just don't trigger you anymore. And if they do trigger you, you know what to do with it. Instead of making something someone else's problem, you know what to do with it. It's a little cold in here. So that discernment allows a space of active listening. And when the 13th Siddhi comes in, it says that you, as the listener, are listening so deeply that now I'm going to take empathy and I'm going to say oneness. That it then dissolves into oneness. Empathy is this ability, it's this ninja level listening that has me able to be inside with you. So he takes great pains in 13 to distinguish sympathy. Sympathy is being with you. Empathy is being in you. And I'm going to give you a little teaching from the Kabbalah that I just freaking love, that will support this understanding of being on the inside. So imagining that we get to be the space and we're on the inside with people. That's why actually the highest level of marketing, and this is what we teach inside the Business Mastery, is empathy. It's meeting the person where they're at instead of telling people where they're wrong or even trying to educate them. I mean, I have the left angle cross of education. And education has its place because this is what I'm doing here. I know that we evolve through education. Now, it's not like book level education or the kind that you receive in school, because that's been hijacked by the logical mind. I think of this education as more right brain, intuitive, feeling education of our own selves, our own awareness, our own body. And once we have that, because we're then not codependent, we're not over there attached to a belief, attached to you needing to be some way, we can stand in our own sovereignty, which then opens up the field of listening. And as I said about marketing, then we can listen truly to what our clients, what our customers are saying. What are they really saying? Not the words that come out of their mouth. What are the deeper words that get to come out of their mouth through our presence? What are they really wanting to say about something? And then our marketing meets them there as a form of empathy. Like, I got you. I see you. The journey I'm going to take you on, you don't even know yet because you're in this view, but I'm going to meet you here in this view, and then we're going to go on a journey to get you what you want. That's the essence of conscious marketing. And so this is a good time to bring in Marc Gafni's work. Marc Gafni is a mystic, in the school of King Solomon, of the mystical lineage. And so I got into his work a while ago, I think in the summer, about the sacred and the erotic. And it was so epic. And his levels of teaching I find very inspiring because of mastery around the Hebrew language. And he really sees the Hebrew language as a magical language. So he plays with words. And I appreciate that, because scholars, as we said, if you are speaking from your outside authority, when you're speaking from your mind, it doesn't have the potency. It has information in it, and it's not bad, but it's more potent when you're speaking from the inside, you're speaking from the experience of it. And so Marc Gafni was talking about this Hebrew word for inside, and it also means face. But then he spun it and he's like, there's a third meaning of it. And this third meaning is the word before. And I'm looking at my notes here. I'm just to keep me on track with a subject matter that I'm not an expert in, but I loved the transmission. So he presents this when we go before God. That is a view that is very dualistic, right? It's from the teachings of Hebrew and Islam and Christianity about this judgment day. We're going to go before God someday, and we're going to have to account for all the ways that we've been a failure. That's how I grew up, right? We have to account for our sin, right? And what Marc Gafni is saying is that before has a different meaning in this magical Kabbalah. And this magical Kabbalah sees before as inside the face of God. That's what that meaning is. And it's the word he uses is called lifnei, and he repeats it over and over. So I could really anchor that inside the face of God, to become one with God. And here's his quote: "Once your journey to God is complete." I'm going to say that again. That's deep. Once your journey to God is complete, the journey in God can begin. How many got that? Once your journey to God is complete, the journey in God can begin. So empathy at its deepest level is being inside. Everyone's inside. When you judge someone, they're outside and you're inside. That's how that works. That's why we like to judge people, because we're so afraid of being outside that we make the other person outside and we're inside. But empathy is being inside with them. It's oneness with them. It's that you are them. It's the breakthrough of seeing yourself as a separate self. And now you see the whole play. You're still sitting as your separate self, but subject object has disappeared, even if it's for a moment. And you see the whole play of form as God, inside the face of God. So there's no judgment day. If you are a recovering Christian in that way, in that tradition that taught that, and not all Christianity teaches that. Mystical Christianity does not. But if you are recovering from this idea of being judged and sin, you can know that that's not true. You are always inside the face of God. Always. You never left. That's just the game we're playing here. Isn't that an incredible salve for those of us who were entrained and taught when we were younger that we were wrong, that we were sinful, that something was wrong with us? So lifnei u lifnim is inside the inside. Inside the Holy of Holies. Gene Key 61 transmission. Psychosis is the shadow. We transform that by becoming inside. You're back with God. You are seeing with the face of God because you are God. We don't really have great language for that because that then is confusing to the ego self. But as we sit with it, as we contemplate, we're starting to really get the ways in which we are God. And our listening opens up a field of transformation. Just by listening in this active way, joining with, and the confusion of the feminine is being responsible for, and I didn't say that, just joining with, being with. It creates a field of transformation. One of the best examples is when someone is dying or someone died of someone you know, someone very close. Like one of my friends years and years ago, her husband died. There is nothing that you can say in that scenario. They were like in their 30s. Nothing, right? There's no words. The only way that I can make an impact in that situation is to be with. And a long time ago when that happened, I went over to her house and she was just curled up in a little ball. And I went in and I just held her. I curled up in that little ball with her. That's empathy. That's being with. And I didn't even know, I still was in my shadow patterns doing my thing. I was hardly on the spiritual path. But thank goodness I knew, just shut up and go be with her. And to this day, I hardly see her. I hardly talk to her. But anytime she reaches out, she says to me, I will never forget the day that you climbed in bed and just helped me. So that, sisters, is really who you are. I know you. That's who you are. That's what you're capable of. That's what you do. So use your empathy in that way and transform the codependence that has you want to pull back because you're going to take on other people's stuff. That's just you being conditioned that somehow you're responsible. That's you, as we said in our last transmission, playing God, not being God, playing God. Something's wrong with the world and I have to fix it and I get to be superior. It's a way of not being really touched. And we had that transmission. So we get to now move to the next place and really allow ourselves to be touched, or allow ourselves to melt. Allow ourselves to heal, really heal. These are the true shaman. The true shaman who hold such impeccable space through their listening that you actually hear yourself and are transformed. You don't need advice. You don't need insight. You just need a field of listening. And when you hear yourself back, that self that is the capital S will start to shine through. And that little S will be seen as the little S that's conditioned. Oh, what a misunderstanding. And you'll begin to see with the eyes of God, inside the face of God. There's no judgment there. You'll see the misunderstandings. You'll see there's nothing to judge. There's only the witness. Richard Rudd says that sympathy requires two people. but empathy demands one. So I hope that through this, you can feel into a place where your superpower can become so activated, so aligned, so expressed in the world as service. Because here's the thing, and not all of us are called to be extroverts, and there's a misunderstanding in this Leo transmissions. Oh, shine, be out there. Yes, see me. That's actually the shadow of the programming partner. That's the shadow of Gene Key 7. That's where the full moon is. The higher octaves of that is the service. And you get to shine through even not saying a word, through just your presence. This way of listening cleans auric fields. It supports others in just dropping away old patterns. If all you did was listen, you could make 6 figures. Because your listening would be renowned, and people would be experiencing transformations and then telling their friends, and then they'd be like, well, what does she do? Oh, I don't know. I don't think she does anything. She just listens. Right? That's possible. It's up to you and who you get to be, right? You have all the tools. It's your blueprint. How do you want to play with your blueprint? I like to talk. I like to be on YouTube and do this thing. But it's not more powerful than someone sitting in a room in deep listening. We all have our gifts, and this full moon is asking us to unleash the gifts, whatever's holding you back. And just know that this too is a superpower. Listen with presence. Yeah, that's it. You've nailed it. It's presence. It's presence, right? And Myrna has a really special child who she listens to in such a way that invents him in his most creative, incredible ways, because she has a listening for him. Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you, sisters. We are complete in our transmission. And I look forward to seeing those of you who are in the Evolving Sisters Network on Walking the Razor's Edge, which will be at the top of the hour that follows this. You can also join if you're not a member. You can just join for the one-off class. And as incredible news, next week, starting tomorrow, Claudia is going to be leading us off with Goddess Dancing Through the Chakras. And that starts at noon Pacific time. No, I think it's 9 a.m. Pacific time. Check in the back end. Now is not the time for me to relay that kind of information, but Claudia kicks us off tomorrow. And then we have 2 more classes this week. So these are offerings for inside of the Evolving Sisters Network to start moving your body and to be in community moving your body. Thank you for being here. Thank you for witnessing. Thank you for your listening. I love you all so much. 9 a.m. Pacific. Yes. Okay. Lots and lots of love. And I'll see you on the next Dharma talk for awakened women and soul education. Mwah.